Teachers of India from my prepared text, let me speak to you as a human being. Of course, teachers is also human beings, which we live. And by the felt experiences which we gather over a whole life of the experiences which we encounter. So I'll share with you some of my own experiences in navigating this area that we are all here to debate and discuss this morning. As my sister Nagaratna mentioned, my spouse Kalpana and I are parents to two lovely children, Priyanka and Mahi, both of whom have a condition called Nivelian myopathy. They are both wheelchair bound. They began schooling for the first time when they came to me. My destiny took me to Delhi. They belonged to the state of Uttarakhand. I'd never been to a formal school because there was no school in the village. When we moved from Allahabad to Delhi, we tried our best to find a school for them, thinking that they had to go to a special school. Allahabad had only one special school which closed down when the good person who ran the school passed away. So there was nobody in Allahabad except for a few pastors and people from the church who would come home and teach them a few alphabets. So they went to Tamanna, run by the redoubtable Mrs. Chona. But soon we realized that they were not meant for a special school because they have a problem of a muscular condition, but their minds are razor sharp. But I can spend the whole day talking about little Priyanka and Mahi. They are now no longer little, they are 16 and 14. They're both wheelchair bound, navigate themselves independently. They don't like to be assisted. Mahi told me a few months ago that she wants to come and see the place where I work in. So I said, hop into the car and we'll go to the court in the morning. As she got off her wheelchair, I realized that there were two small steps which prevented her from seeking access to the place of justice, and somebody had to lift the wheelchair and bring her in. And I quite didn't like the fact that somebody had to lift the wheelchair and bring her in. But those two small steps led to the creation of a ramp. And then we've put into place an accessibility committee of the Supreme Court, which has given its report, which we are now implementing. I wouldn't speak too much more about my experiences of life, which I've gained from Mahi and Priyanka. I can only tell you that they have completely changed my universe of existence. Little Mahi is the reason why I have been turned into a vegan, because she's a fierce environmental activist. She's an animal rights activist. Both of them are amazing photographers. They take pictures in our garden of birds in different moods and different shades of the day and the evening. But both of them have persuaded me to adopt a lifestyle which is cruelty-free. Not just in terms of eating vegan food, because being a vegan is not just about the food that you eat, the lifestyle that you live. And to adopt a lifestyle in which you don't accept or support cruelty to any living being in any form, whatever. But I'll leave Mahi and Priyanka alone for the moment, as they are in Delhi with my wife. But I was reading the other day about this tweet by an IAS officer from the state of Telangana, who was wondering why you should have differently abled individuals in the civil service. And she said that how can an IAS officer do the work of a civil service officer if you are not, quote unquote, mainstream? And she said, if I had a physical problem, would I ever go to a surgeon with disability? said to myself, that's why I began by telling you that our universe of experience shapes our ideas and the way we evolve as persons. And I'll share a personal story in response, not an abstract theory like what judges are prone to speak. I was the spouse to someone who was a cancer survivor for almost 12 years. My late former spouse passed away in 2008. Now, when she was undergoing chemotherapy, the leading expert from the world of chemotherapy in India, Dr. Suresh Advani, came to the Jaslok hospital in a wheelchair. So the answer to the question as to whether I'd go to a surgeon if I had a problem, the surgeon suffered from disability, I would only point out the example of Dr. Suresh Advani, a living example of a person who is renowned worldwide for his expertise in chemotherapy. And he incidentally performed the first stem cell transplant in India. So much for not having differently able persons in the civil service. We made history in the Supreme Court on the 6th of October 2023 when a young deaf lawyer, Sara Suni, requested me that, well, I want to address the court. And how would I address the court if I don't follow which my opponent says or what you say as a judge? And that led to us having the very facility which we have on the dais this morning of someone explaining to people who have hearing impairment on what is happening in the Supreme Court. As part of your session today, you have as one of the participants Rahul Bajaj, a young blind lawyer. Rahul joined my chamber as a law clerk several years ago, a young Rhodes scholar who thought that instead of completing his PhD at Oxford, he should rather see the real life experiences of the Supreme Court. In so many which ways, my interaction with Rahul changed my own perception of the way we view people who suffer from, or not suffer from, but are born or are impaired. In so many which ways, Rahul's engagement with the registry of the Supreme Court, with judges of the Supreme Court, has changed the way we as judges have tried to make ourselves and our institution more accessible to persons with disability. I've been chairing the E-Committee of the Supreme Court for the last 5 years, and the E-Committee has adopted 6 accessibility parameters. High Court websites, access to judgments, access to cause lists, access to case status, contrast and color themes, text sizes, screen reader access. We have moved from a purely visual capture to an audio capture. And we have worked with the National Institute of Visually Handicapped and the National Association for the Blind. 28 batches have been trained across India. We have 558 visually challenged staff in our district judiciary who have been trained by the staff at the E-Committee. Somebody spoke about my recent judgment in Aamp Visually, that is the name of the movie, where we laid down parameters for representation of the differently able in the visual media. Well, the film had excerpts it had not disability humor, but humor which completely, in that sense, was pejorative to the differently able. They referred to a person who had a forgetful memory, perhaps suffering from dementia, as a bullock. And I said to myself that, well, my mother suffered from dementia in the last few years of her life. She was suffering from Alzheimer's. I call my own mother Gulakkar. It called a person who suffered from a stammer as an atakti hui record. It was supposed to be humor. And I said to myself, I had to only read about the life story of Mr. Nani Palkhiwala, one of the greatest lawyers ever born in India, who was born and suffered from a stammer for several years of his initial life, and then became one of the most eloquent lawyers that the country has seen. So these are just a few examples which I thought I must begin by sharing with you, that in a sense, the barriers to inclusion, the barriers for mainstreaming every individual in society are not born either in the medical conditions of those who need to be included. They are not born in any other area other than our own minds. And it is only by engaging with others, by understanding the perspective of others at conclaves like this, that we can, in that sense,